on a level of love, on a level of vibration of love, and really feeling them as alive and as nourishing love to us, because they are our parents, our divine parents as human beings. After we connect with them, and then we are now ready to go and deep.
Kinesthetic, which means touch. People are looking for this in a sight. Everyone wants to be touched by their family, friends, and loved ones from far away. This can be done through a prosthetic. The person at the computer would trigger off the prosthetic to give it a motion to the person on the other end. For example, a prosthetic hand. Touching prosthetics can also be used on dating sites as an option. People, and they can use their computer to touch and feel computer robotic sensations to fill a need or void. You heard it here.
Good evening. Welcome to Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. I'm with you now. I'm with you to the end. We always push that end back just a little bit further every week. That's why we appreciate you coming out to that channel, to this show, right here in downtown Toronto at Bay and Dundas, because that's where the action is. We play world global domination. We play it better than anybody else can. Very few, a lot of people just have to go to night school for months and months and months just to figure out tiny little aspects of this show. We're here for the whole game. Knock down, drag out, fright from beginning to end. Some of the things that have happened in the last week are just so mind-boggling that, you know, you just shudder. There's even some nights sometimes I even find it hard to sleep, and I usually sleep like a log. You just wonder, like, wow, man, how can something like that happen and be hid under the ground so deep? How can so many people be so uninterested? But then always remember that one little piece of scripture comes like a thief in the night, because nobody sees it coming. Nobody cares, even if you tell them. So whatever it is, it's just like there's a small bit of truth, a small reality, and then they just ease back in the chair and fall asleep again, completely oblivious. That's why I like one of my old police partners. He's probably long gone and dead now because he was so much older than me, but you know, he used to call it obliviousness. And it was like it's a religion or a faith or a concept of the human mind, obliviousness. And people are just so happy to live in that altered state. But see, the beautiful thing is we can change the paradigm. We don't have to suffer after the thief in the night comes. We can turn on the lights, sound the alarm, and make the thief run away. That's a lot of power to have, and you can have that power by doing something very, very simple. Turning the channel. Turn off the programming of major corporate mind control media and the corporate bastards who own our governments pretty much like they own their whores. These guys will swing through the hoops and do almost anything. There isn't a day goes by I'm just not shocked. Even a lady today told me, the secret, we have the omnibus bill at the federal level that's getting all the media now, but our provincial government, Ontario government here, has signed off for the summer, but they had their budget omnibus bill too, where they brought in a whole pile of changes to change all sorts of laws completely and totally and give the cabinet the power to rule by decree. So, see, we're getting our Greek haircut for the future. It's already pre-planned, all the logs are put in place, so as soon as that economic tsunami comes across the ocean and hits us, they're ready to sell the store, to sell your soul, and to give away everything. The big news here in Ontario is like big Toronto education cutback in the budget, $109 million. Like there were days there'd be people fighting in the streets over something like that. Just razor blade to the budget. Probably never should have got as big as it was anyway, because you're borrowing other people's money to do who knows what. But just cut back, cut back, cut back. You can't afford to live on borrowed money or borrowed dreams forever. Sooner or later, you got to pay the piper. And the piper are the international banksters and gangsters, and they're all lined up to take your living soul. Because that's the ultimate end game, your chattel. And they're going to scare us and dare us with everything under the sun. But if you know what's coming and you're prepared, you can step aside. and not get hit by this economic tsunami, or at least be able to ride it out reasonably well until we get to the other side. And thank God for the fact that we knew it was coming. Some of the big sports in Greece are like dumpster diving. They don't put them in the Olympics yet, but maybe in an Olympics down the road it will be. And the other one is the walk to paradise, where you leap off the roof of your apartment building, and maybe you don't get all the virgins like they do in the jihads, but you just give up the ghost, because yesterday you lived in this artificial world and today they called in the loans. One of the saddest cases was, a man 60 years old, lost his job, couldn't make ends meet, had to care for a 91-year-old mother. There's no government health plans like there used to be. They were all cut back, and they're doing the same thing here in Ontario. See, that's in that sneaky omnibus bill. They can privatize everything without even going to Parliament, because we gave them a blank check. Now the cabinet ministers can rule by decree. So if I'm the Minister of Transportation and I want to privatize everything in my ministry, I can do it. Without any input or consent from the public, I can give away all that money to big corporations. And you know why? Because they probably put more than bricks in my pocket, like they did with old Mr. Calvi hanging from Blackfriars Bridge. They put some cash in too. These guys just got the cash, no bricks, to send offshore somewhere nice and sit back in the shade. No one will ever remember their name after all these policies come to fruition. One of the ones for the Ministry of Health is they could privatize OHIP, the Ontario Health Insurance Plan, and put it over to, see, we've got to harmonize because we're going to be the North American Union. So they're going to put this plan over to these health boards like they have in the United States to decide who gets what and how. So when you come in and you're going, oh man, I'm so sore, I got this pain, that pain, well, they do a cost-benefit analysis on you. Well, if he lives, what kind of work could he do after that? So is it worth us investing all this money in a 50-something-year-old car or a 60-something-year-old car, or even worse, we're never going to invest money in any car that's over 75. So if you need an operation, what I've heard from some people already today is you can't get it. We're going to cut you off. So then the whole concept of this old movie, Logan's Run, is where as long as you can live and work to a certain age, Logan's Run, you got out, they killed you early. I don't remember, it was late 20s, early 30s. You used up your shelf life. That's it. You have to turn yourself in for destruction. But Logan, he ran away. And with his girl, big exciting movie, chase scenes, trying to get away from the New World Order. So now we have the first established date for Logan's Run, 75. You're too old, you don't get any health care, you die. Too bad, too sad. But the sad part is a lot of people live well into their 90s and they're perfectly healthy. So if you slip and fall in the bathtub and break your hip, why should you deprive surgery in your 80s when you probably got 12, 15 years left to go after you recover, maybe? So no. You're retired. We have no need for you. It's a disposable situation. We'll get into that more later with Time Magazine's front cover. Die. Pull the plug on your parents. It's good for the soul. It's good for the state's soul. They don't have to pay anymore. We have to adopt this death culture so we can keep all the people in debt forever and ever and ever. It's amazing. But that's the way these people work. It's very sad. So there's supposed to be something in this omnibus bill that was Bill 55 in the Ontario Legislature called Article 28, and that was the thing that gave all these powers to everyone. But because it's buried in the omnibus bill, nobody can read it, probably not even the people who voted for it. There should be no way in hell that there should be something called an omnibus bill. You vote for every little thing independently and individually, and everyone who votes on it should have to sign off on every page that they read it. And if they haven't read it, they should be put in prison for a good few years until they catch up on their reading. And then when they catch up on their reading, they can vote again, and then we'll let them out of prison. Very simple. Then we'll know where they are, too. Oh, there he is, cell block 5. No problem. So in the intervening week, of course, we have the anniversary of, another death culture maneuver where the USS Liberty was attacked by Israel and blown to smithereens. And of course, we don't memorize it like Pearl Harbor Day or VE Day, VJ Day, or any of the other days they come out with, Remembrance Day, Armistice Day, because, see, they were killed in a covert kind of style where they were supposed to be executed in a false flag maneuver by their own people with contract agents coming in to do the dirty work. And even though they're screaming for help and there's a U.S. carrier task force within easy reach, they just blow them all to smithereens and let them die. But for some strange reason, God works miracles sometimes. And even though many men were killed, I think it was 34, the ship survived, and many of the men survived. A lot of men were wounded. They were shelled, torpedoed, bombed, strafed, napalmed. They did everything they possibly could to kill these Americans. People like a lot of people who listen to this show, just good, decent Americans who believed in the system, tried to serve their country to the best of their ability, whether they're in uniform or not. But the New World Order said, sucks to be you, we're going to wipe you guys out. And every once in a while, it's just somebody's turn. And the only reason it's somebody's turn is because corporate media turns out the light and goes away. And this becomes a conspiracy theory. So they had the goods on what really happened in the war, who shot first and who didn't, and they knew too much. So they had to be eliminated. So they make up a cover story. They thought this was an Egyptian ship of some sort or another. You know, it's clearly marked, USS Liberty. It's a Liberty-class ship, one of the most famous ships in the world at the time. They were the cargo ships of choice to go across the Atlantic and all over the world to take war supplies from A to B. You can't say you don't know what one of those are. It's like saying you can't recognize a Ford on an American highway and you think it's an Egyptian camel. It's a big difference. Plus it had that funny little flag on the top with the stars and stripes and the big white numbers and all that kind of stuff. And usually they make sure like the pilots don't fly blindfolded or stuff like that. And then they probably got on the radio and they're calling for help, right? And that's a good sign that you're probably shooting the wrong guys. But they did it anyway, as they had to destroy all this information. And of course the man behind this was Admiral McCain. John McCain's father was instrumental in the Liberty event and in many other events. We'll even get into a little sidebar of another one I didn't even know, where he stranded 25,000 American soldiers on Guadalcanal and left them there to be feasted on by the Japanese. And you're voting for his son in primaries from time to time to be president of the United States. Everybody should have a little ball-peen hammer. Well, maybe that's too rough. Maybe just get a rubber mallet. And you got to bang yourself a couple of times to say, what the hell? And then on the other side, you got the Bushites who fed Hitler and put him into power so you could kill all your children and brutalize the planet Earth. And you vote for the son and grandson of the people who put Hitler in power. Bong, 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 bong. You got to hit yourself with that rubber mallet again. Until the eyes focus and there's some sense. Because what's the use of living in Disneyland in the dream world if you blow your balls off by getting in some stupid war, or allow your children to get killed, or allow your children to be orphans because their daddy don't come home, because you get sucker punched again and again and again and again and again and again. Wake up. Some people woke up. They were standing in Israel and Jordan and the Mediterranean around Crete, and they looked up in the sky. And it's like, wow, there's wonders in the sky. We see that pinwheel pattern that appeared around Norway a couple of years ago. And some people say it's a missile. Some people say maybe it's not. I find it hard to see a missile flipping around in concentric circles, tight circles, especially when they fly at like Mach 2.5. Big turning circle there. Not like your little, you know, your little compact car or something like that where you can whip it around. Can we show the picture of our missile? Or whatever. So this was supposed to have happened, I believe, on the night of the 8th. About 8:45 p.m. This is the Flaming Chariot, 120 to 180 miles up. There was panic among observers because they didn't know if it was a missile or a UFO. Well, if it was a UFO, I wouldn't be too worried. If it's a missile, and I'm in Israel, and I see an intercontinental ballistic missile coming in, it's like, you know, Red Dawn, Red Dawn! And actually it was Red Dawn, because this missile was supposed to come from Russia. Russia was test firing a Topol missile, they said, and they were firing it over Kazakhstan, which is in the opposite direction. So this gives you a little bit of an idea. They're firing it from this missile launching place here, Astrakhan, and it's going to fly over Kazakhstan in the Aral Sea area. So we'll put that in a smaller map here, but you get the idea that this is going like towards China, right? Now, Israel is in the other direction. By far in the other direction. So how the hell did these people see the missile? Obviously, it was aimed at Israel. And why would Russia aim a missile at Israel? Because they're probably telling the New World Order, hey baby, We don't like what's going down. You're muscling into Syria. You want to start a war with Iran. You're trying to take over the Middle East. You know, we're not too happy with that. We think that's big, big, big mistake on your part. So this is a little bit of a close-up of the missile. Almost looks like a spiral galaxy, or you know, whatever. But you really got to take control of the information. This should be like an international story, maybe. Like even an idiot from the newspaper could probably say, well, let's see, Israel's in that direction and Kazakhstan's in the other direction, so that means Russia really fired the missile at Israel. But no, 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 no. See, you can't hear that. You can't figure that out. You can't find that. It's not allowed. Some of the things that also are very disturbing is sometimes alternative media just drops the ball. So I didn't follow this story on, you know, some of the other larger volume shows to see, you know, how far they carried the ball. Did they catch on about this? Like RT television, of course, did. But, you know, did other people pick up on it and take it further and start to realize, you know, first they just did the dead end story, and we'll play a video from the dead end story. You see here, we're going to do the launch of the missile. I found this on Alex Jones's InfoWars. Hopefully it's still there. And we're going to see this go. So are we able to see that there?
Булаву запустили. Булаву. Это ракета ядерная. Вон полетел, смотри. Да она приближается.
In this video, as it's going around, like as the missile took off, you can see like smoke still standing in front of the building. And then they show another shot where the missile's going through the air. Like that shot, you know, it's way up there. It's not making any spirals, and it's close, like it just took off. But when we went back a little bit, at the very beginning, there was still like almost like a chemtrail-esque smoke stream above the building. See if we can find it here. So this little gadget here, this smoke screen, just seemed to stay for a while. For whatever reason, I don't know, but it did tend to stay, and that's a little bit confusing. Yeah, we can go back to my ugly mug now. Good stuff. Now, then we see the version that happened over Israel. Completely in the opposite direction. So let's get into this report.
Place near the border between Israel and Lebanon, an illuminated object emerged in the night sky and began to spiral for several minutes, attracting thousands of puzzled onlookers. A similar sight was witnessed in Norway in 2009 and turned out to be a failed missile launch. Well, most experts believe that's what was seen over Israel, despite some people convinced of extraterrestrial activity.
Okay, good stuff. Very interesting. So they had you know, thank God for these little cameras. Everybody's got these little cameras, so they can't get away with much, and that's fantastic, really. So, you know, what is this thing? Well, it's a sign everywhere, a sign. You know, flaming chariot over Israel, Bible prophecy, that's got to be something that, you know, if you're on the ground, that's just got to make you crap in your drawers almost. Unless you're just so totally, you know, poleaxed with the magic karma wave of taking Prozac and all the suitable prescription and non-prescription drugs and getting into the big pharma wave or something like that. But, you know, for the rest of us who are sentient and think or something like that, just going. Then, you know, you get one important story. Then there's another important story. Something should just be like on CNN, or 60 Minutes should be doing it this Sunday or something like that. But it's not. It just gets swept under the rug. Even alternative media seems to sweep it under the rug. Maybe they don't understand. You know, maybe the dumbing down of America has gone so far that even the people who are reasonably smart can't take an extra step to be a little bit smarter and figure a few things out. But as soon as I heard this story, it's like, you know, hey, man, this was a hot story. No pun intended. Nuclear event on the Indiana-Michigan border. Like, you know, that's got to make your eyeballs just, whoa, let's get into focus here. So what do? We have a radiation sensor here at the Indiana-Michigan border going just like ballistic. So the highest levels are over 7,000 CPMs, where an alert is 100 CPM. Like, you know, you're getting fried, baby. It's important. So what do? Because that meter doesn't match a lot of the other meters, they close it down and take it offline. It's like, excuse me? Hello? Close it down, take it offline. No, this is saying this has got, you know, fantastic amounts of radiation coming out of it. So it turns out the operator was away, and this thing was on autopilot or something like that, and it reported these things. I speculate truthfully, because I'm very, very concerned that they've turned off or turned down or put in false, fake numbers on these other radiation detectors, so they're all, you know, just kind of average, right? Because they don't want anybody to see the Fukushima radiation coming in. So just, oh yeah, we're all around, you know, 20, 30, 40, nothing wrong, everything's fine, go back to sleep, nothing to worry about. And then some asshole goes away and leaves his meter on without putting in the artificial data. And it just goes ballistic. So everybody says, oh, no, it's the meter, the meter's all at fault. Well, I'm not going to take that at face value until I start looking. Then I find other stories about, you know, all kinds of mysterious booms in Michigan and explosions and such like that. Another guy copied this data set, would screen save this, this material. So it shows the radiation, Fort Wayne, Indiana, going up over a 12-hour period. So why is that? Probably because it's true. And then a lady that I found on the internet who was doing a YouTube report on this, she has her own Geiger counter. I guess she's a hobby scientist, like some people I've known who do very good work and are very smart. So she had her own Geiger counter, and her Geiger counter started to go a little bit up too. Then there's reports of helicopters and aircraft flying through the sky. Well, we see that. People took pictures. All kinds of extra air maneuvers. They said, I can't prove that one way or another, that they put an Air Force base in some kind of nuclear containment lockdown, which is much farther away, and we can't confirm or deny that. But we also get another map of from another source that monitors radiation. This one's already at over 3,500 in the same place. But what really jigged me when I was looking at, there's our fearless leader, Mr. President, there is no cause for alarm. Everything has been covered up, including me. See, he gets the ghoulie suit and the happy smile, and he's protected and safe. It's the rest of us that get fried out in the sunshine. So this young lady started talking about, you know, how the wind, she did the weather as well as looking at the radiation, was coming from Palisades nuclear power plant. And then right away I go, power plant. Yes, yes, yes. Maybe there's something to do with the power plant. So I did find the other power plant on the other side in Ohio, leaking, had a leak, has a notorious history. Notorious. So let's see here if I can yeah, switch back to my mug, and then we don't have to look at my emails. There we go. Who is that guy? Let's see here. I believe that's this one here. Let's have a peek.
Has been recording extremely high levels for about the past 30 minutes. This number was as high as 7,000. At one point it's gone back and forth anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000, 5,000. I haven't seen it up to 7,000 yet. Again, let me refresh the page. It's 4,000 now. Looking at GOES, this is the current GOES geostationary satellite, and the wind direction would be coming right from Palisades. Palisades is right here, South Bend is here, or there could be something going on in the Chicago area, but I did not see any other stations reporting high numbers like this. I did call the NRC, and I'm going to play that tape for you in just a second. And while I was on the phone with them, my Geiger counter started alerting at 42 microsieverts, and it did that for about 5 minutes, and now it's back to normal background. So I'm not sure what's going on here. This could be a malfunction, but as a precaution, anyone that lives downwind of this area should be keeping their windows shut, HEPA filters on, or filtering through your furnace for room air. And we will keep you posted as soon as we know anything else. You can go to the Radiation Network page and watch the real-time updates, or go to Radiation Watch on Facebook, and I think they are calling me back right now, so I'm going to pause this. Okay, yes, that was the NRC calling me back. They checked with Palisades. They're not having any problems. He said because it's crowdsourced data, and they're not sure of the reliability, and they're looking into that from Radiation Network standpoint also. In fact, let me refresh the page and see what it is now. It's dropped a little bit, but these readings have been sustained for about 30 minutes. So we'll keep an eye on it, and I told them if I still see it in another hour or so, I'm going to be calling them back. And if I make another call to them, they will have a Region 3 person on it tomorrow. So we'll keep you guys posted, but let anyone know who lives in this area. Let me check in telecast real quick and see if there's anything going on rain-wise. I don't think there was. Looks like very little in the way of precipitation. So we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll keep you guys posted. Stay safe.
Okay, I guess that'll do us. So that's the absolute beauty of a citizen reporter, someone who has skills and abilities, and uses those skills and abilities for the benefit of their fellow human beings. So you see right away that it's hit the fan. It's big time hit the fan. And the government lies. They lie all the time. As we get into this report, this is the leak I found. Coolant leak and tiny hole found at Davis-Besse nuclear plant. Associated Press. So that's in the other side of Michigan there in Ohio. So they said they had a tiny little leak, everything's okay, nothing to worry about, you know, typical lies. And then when you get to some details about, you know, what's going on in the world, a bathtub curb for nuclear accidents, frequency of equipment failure, and you see like the top ones. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Indian Point, and Davis-Besse. So then you got to realize, like, whoa, this doesn't sound so good. And they assure us there is no cause for alarm. There's no safety or health threat to the public. So the equipment reported a pin-sized leak, they say. And then we see recordings at a nearby nuclear monitor going off the scale. Bloggers report this wasn't the first time. It's happened before. And I'll tell you something, it's happened before that there were leaks at this nuclear plant. This nuclear plant had 2 of the top 5 accidents in the United States. 2. Not bad, 40%. Maybe it's even higher because maybe they had another one, so maybe they're batting 50, 500. So on March 2nd, 2002, corrosion had eaten a football-sized hole in a reactor vessel. The largest fine ever was assigned to this nuclear plant, more than $5 million, plus an additional $28 million in fines under a settlement. In 1977, September 24th, a relief valve on a pressurizer stuck open. That was the 4th ranked worst event in nuclear history in the United States. June 9th, 1985, main feedwater pumps shut down. Originally classified as unusual event, the lowest classification the NRC has. It was later determined that it should have been classified as a site area emergency. So maybe they really are batting 500. They just didn't tell anybody. So now we have a history of they underreporting. So this pinhole size thing is probably something we can take with a lot of grains of salt, that they lied. June 24th, 1998, they hit with an F2 tornado. Well, that's not their fault. Maybe. 2002, reactor head hole. Borated water that serves as the reactor coolant had leaked from cracked control rod device mechanisms directly above the reactor and eaten through more than 6 inches of carbon steel reactor pressure vessel head over an area roughly the size of a football. That's some good acid. A breach most likely would have resulted in a mass loss of coolant accident in which superheated, superpressurized reactor coolant would have jetted into the reactor's containment building and resulted in emergency safety procedures to protect from core damage or meltdown. That was the 5th most dangerous nuclear incident in the United States since 1979. Maybe there were way worse ones before 1979, so that's why they started that as a threshold. In 2003, the slammer worm infected the safety monitoring equipment at the plant. 2006, they had criminal prosecutions over the previous incident in 2002. So it appears here 2 former employees and 1 former contractor were indicted for statements made in multiple documents and 1 videotape over several years for hiding evidence that the reactor pressure vessel was being corroded by boric acid. They provided false information to inspectors, but it does not name who did this. They might still be working there and they have experience in doing what they're doing. So when they say they have a pinhole leak, that's just for the pinhole heads. 2010 replacement reactor head problem. A used replacement head from a mothballed reactor in Midland was put in this reactor. 2 of the nozzles inspected did not meet acceptance criteria. We found cracks in 24 of 69 nozzles, serious enough to leak boric acid. Very good. 2011, shield building crack. 30-foot long hairline crack in the concrete shield building around the reactor vessel. 2012, of course, we have our infamous pinhole leak, if that's what indeed it was. And this is a map showing you where this reactor is. So some of the monitors were over here around South Bend, at the top, and then just over here past Toledo, we have this reactor with a long history and a reported history of something going wrong. Palisades is up here. I'm sure maybe they can hide things too. So we just found this cute little picture, when the wind blows. So it's all we can do is hold on to each other because our governments aren't going to protect us. They're not even going to tell us. We could be eating radioactive dust for days, weeks, or months and barbecuing our internal organs. So all we can do is hold on to each other and pray. That's all we get. Because we just have a criminal cabal running virtually everything. One of the other downsides to this story is then we have the propagandists coming in, like Saoirse Fall, coming in saying 380 people were reported killed in Michigan in some sort of battle, that Obama launched a weapon on them and killed them, and you know that America is in a quasi-civil war or something. This doesn't help anything. But then with his relations with the FSB, the Russian security service, we can honestly say that he's an agent provocateur, putting out false information for a reason, to cause shit in the United States. Oh my other video has disappeared. Isn't that a shame? So I had another one with, let's see here, I think I linked it through my my website. It's amazing. One of our other reporters had stuff go missing too frequently. So since I'm opening them anyway, I guess I can find it again quickly and hopefully play it for you, because we have a news report. Now let's see if that's the one here. Here we go. So this is a news report about guys hearing the booms. A lot of people are trying to say it's crapola or something like that. Maybe try to get it on a YouTube version so I get a better shot at it. We can have some sound for me, and away we go.
The area are reporting hearing and feeling some strange things last night and this morning. We've been receiving emails and Facebook messages from people in both Kalamazoo and Calhoun counties wanting to know what caused it. News Channel 3's Ryan Duffy went to find out what it was. He's live now with more. Ryan.
Aaron, just about everyone talking about this on Facebook or people we talk to directly say pretty much the same thing. They heard a loud explosion like thunder, but the skies were clear and then the ground shook. The sound was so loud, John Neuenhaus was sure something blew up in his home.
It was like an explosion, and there was no doubt in my mind something blew up in the basement. I mean, the house just violently shook, so I quick ran downstairs, and there was nothing going on down there.
So he ran outside and saw this. 2 large trees in front of his house snapped in half and laying across his driveway.
So I ran on the other side of the trees, really expecting.
I paused this, and when you look at the channel 3, you're going to see a time above. Okay, now look at that closely. It's a little small, but it says 5:06, 11, and 9, right? 9/11, with the all-seeing eye, of course, of CBS, and 3. So to have the multiple of 3 9s, 3 11s, 33 degrees of Freemasonry, the inverted cross, 999, that is the textbook signature of the New World Order to say, this is our business. We did this. If you have eyes to see and ears to hear, they tell the whole world, even though it was a local story as opposed to an international story. Let's continue.
There's absolutely nothing over there.
He called the Ostramo Fire Department, but they didn't find anything either that might have crashed out of the sky. John's neighbor also told us her house shook at around 8:30 this morning. And although he's the only case of actual damage, last night there were other explosions reported in Calhoun County. Centered around the Union City and Burlington areas, dozens of people there posted on Facebook that they heard a boom and their houses shook at around 10:30 last night. There were no earthquakes recorded anywhere in the Midwest region last night, and Air Traffic Control in Kalamazoo says there were no planes flying that might have broken the sound barrier.
So, yeah, it was quite surprising and a little scary.
And we are continuing to look into this. The Calhoun County Emergency Management Department says it has received these reports but doesn't have any explanation. One of its theories was it could be powerful fireworks, but this being heard in such a large area, that probably is unlikely. Reporting live, Ryan Duffy.
Okay, a little bit of truth buried down the memory hole, retrieved by us and kept handy. So what really happened? Do we get to have the full picture? Probably not. We can only dig as far as we can dig, but at least we get it started. What's one of our other little things we should, think would be international news or news? Some people are picking up on it. Mr. Duffy, that writes for Veterans Affairs, is. So I call this one Man Your Battle Stations for Fukushima too, because I seem to be the only person who have connected the fact that this Japanese ship called the Chikyu keeps drilling into the plates off Japan. So when it was drilling off the plates, when I discovered this in 2010, I said, and our shows are hopefully archived here somewhere at ThatChannel that you can use the little search and go back and find these things. I don't have to eat my words there. This ship will cause an enormous event off the coast of Japan. So, not a bad guess. Not a bad guess. A little bit later we had Fukushima. We had this massive earthquake. But I said that years ago here and, on the other side of the room that this was going to happen. I had a bigger table at my disposal too. But, I remember it very, very well. Because these pressure plates at the bottom are just so severe. So if drilling into it isn't the problem, the fact that you leave the borehole or the drill hole does leave it open for someone to come along and plant something down there, like a nuclear device or some type of explosive, to vaporize a lot of rock and cause one plate to move rapidly over another plate and create an earthquake or a simulated earthquake. Very easily done. And no one would ever know, because you can have these guys drill the holes and go away, and then you come in with your remote submarines that they can go to the bottom of the Pacific in and plant your little jewel down there and just disappear into the woodwork, and then something happens and no one can relate A to B or B to A. So where we're having this drill going down is here on the Japan Trench, just pretty much off the coast on the same side that Fukushima happened, and you see it's drilling into a large ridge of these two plates. There's several photographs here that just show you the magnificent ledge that we're on here. And then this one is underground to show you how one plate's rubbing on another plate. So if you blow away a lot of territory here somewhere, and then this North American plate just rapidly goes over the other plate, bingo, you've got yourself an earth-shattering event. And in one of the movies that we've played or have posted on the site, you know, we talk about something like that. It's early 60s or something like that, but it's a, you know, The Crack in the World, I think it was called, but great conspiracy movie about the fact that they're drilling a giant hole through the mantle, putting an explosive down there to do their little mayhem with unexpected consequences. This one in the movie, for effect, cracks the earth in half. And this giant ridge just keeps moving, 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 moving. So that's probably a little grandiose, but it's almost like what happens today. I think they just make earthquakes as opposed to cracking the earth in half. We have to try harder. This is Chikyu. This is the drill ship. Nice little schematic of what she can do. She's drilled some of the deepest holes in the Earth's surface from the ocean. It's absolutely amazing, the technology that they have at their disposal. Part of what happens with this that makes it a conspiracy is when they put, this is the data of accumulation from this research expedition. So they have what they call these J-core databases, which are shared broadly over you know, many, many different fields from different types of scientists and so, whatever. They all have independent access to this J-core of data, and of course if they have access to it, well then obviously the intelligence agencies and the military have access to it too, and they can access and use this data without the knowledge of any of the other parties that are tapping into this data mine. Mr. Duff from Veterans internet site, he's come up with some reports on this too. Gordon Duff, senior editor. Now I'm the only editor here, but he's come up with some material to suggest that there's dates involved. He's naming June 21st, June 22nd, or possibly August 17th. And maybe he works with the intelligence agency, so maybe he can say these things. I was the only person that I know of in the planet Earth that even came close to relating the Chikyu to this event, but you know, maybe he's heard me on other forums, especially when we did some of these things on the Power Hour, that that this was going on. This is part of what they call the Integrated Ocean Drilling Program, IODP, the Japan Trench Fast Drilling Project. There is a dangerous precedent here where we have the Fukushima 4 teetering as a semi-destroyed structure, waiting at any minute for another event that will send the remaining structure into a collapse mode and release the water from the holding tanks that are keeping these reactor rods, and there's tons and tons and tons and tons of them, cool. If this water coolant was released, and because it's already in a highly radioactive environment, there's really nobody in there to fill it back up again exactly, unless we're taking volunteers for suicide missions. And what's been reported on that, one of the world's top stories that nobody talks about, would be an extinction level event, because there'd be a nuclear explosion and fire, and that would release highly radioactive material, way more than the original Fukushima, and send this stuff all over the world. Mr. Duff also says this would be an intentional attack on the United States of America, and I can't disagree with that. The hard part is to figure out exactly who's doing it. Is it our inside Kabbalist and dangerous people? Is it something coming from a third party? You know, is it the Russians? Is it the Chinese? I can pretty much be rest assured it's definitely not the Japanese, because they got to eat this stuff. Or as you know, a previous blogger has pointed out, were bombs put at Fukushima where this was actually damage committed by Israel because they had contracts to work on the Fukushima reactors, and they put these large cameras of some sort that are pretty much the size of nuclear weapons in place. That could be very, very, very well true. Mr. Duff also goes into some sort of story which is almost like a fantasy story, where he says this German submarine that was supposed to allegedly have had a nuclear weapon on it that shipped out of Germany, brought this device to Japan. And I find that hard to believe, one, because the submarine involved wasn't German, it was actually Israeli, and it just doesn't make sense that they could be transshipping this weapon to the other side. These diesel-electric submarines are great. especially the latest versions. But Germany has retired 6 of them that are probably in reasonable condition to be used because they were going to sell them to Thailand. Thailand backed out of the deal just recently as well. But S-194, 195, 196, 197, 172 and 173 retired in 2010, 2011 are fit and ready to go if they had to be fit and ready to go. The possibility does exist. Duff gets into some bizarre stuff where old World War II German U-boats are, you know, reconditioned and made available to do all kinds of covert work. Seems highly unlikely. These parts are very, very old, and the ocean is very, very unforgiving in dealing with stuff like that. Maybe you could cross the river or something like that, but I can't see those ancient old boats hightailing it across the Pacific in any way, shape, or form. But there was something that this little reporter has brought to the attention. See if I can blow that picture up a little bit. But, you know, of course, we did cover that ship, the Thor Liberty, that was in Finland. Had some kind of weapon shipment, Stinger missiles, lots of explosives, and just kind of like disappeared off the radar screen. Ultimately, it went to China, and it arrived at China, been there for some period of time. It's still sailing in the East China Sea. Maybe I'll post this on a blog later, but as of the 13th, at 16:29 UTC, it was there. And then, of course, now that it's off the radar screen a little bit, that nobody's caring about it, I had a whole pile of positions reported that I've saved, so it had been around that area for some period of time. And of course, Chikyu now is off Japan, so, you know, we have them within a reasonable degree of sailing time being close to each other. If Thor Liberty did transship a nuclear weapon all the way across the Pacific to hide out in China or in the vicinity of China, maybe to rendezvous with Chikyu or some other vessel who's going to hit to the drill holes, and some of the other drill holes are further south, clearly marked and laid out for anyone who could come along and use them. But it just seemed kind of funny. And Chikyu went under the radar too, like its position wasn't reported for like 19 days or something, so this is an old thing, so they weren't reporting its position on a regular basis. It could very well have rendezvoused and made contact with Thor Liberty's cargo. We didn't forget. We never forget. Sometimes we don't have enough time, but we don't forget. Because these events can be extinction level events. And the only way to stop the extinction is to turn on the lights and expose all the cockroaches that do all this dirty work. And nobody's going to do it much. We have some pale imitations, but nobody's going to really sit down and do it. And that's why we got to thank a lot of our listeners who ponied up to the plate and sent some donations our way. We had a few on PayPal, and we had our big donation from Europe, and that's keeping it going. You enjoy breathing? Support the show. You tuck your children at night, you don't want to see them go up in a nuclear fireball? Support the show. Because I'll say it, I'm not afraid. Anything we can turn the lights on for, there's no them and there's no us, there's just us. And even them that are stupid that want to hurt us are stupid, because they're only hurting themselves. But the only way to stop them is to have a channel to change to that will take on these hard and fast issues and just shove the pie in the New World Order's face and go, eh. Because there's other issues coming along too, just as important. They're setting us up almost on every front, continentally if they can, to teach us some heavy-duty lessons. See here, maybe we can continue a little bit on London cover-up. This is an article, you know, that I found goes into a great deal of detail on the nuclear waste that was left at the Olympic site. It's absolutely scandalous. London 2012, a rubbish Olympics. Most of the rubbish associated with the contamination remains under these venues because they couldn't move it. You need special permission to take the nuclear waste and send it somewhere else. Well, they can't get that. So what they decided to do was just keep it at that site and rebury it. So by reburying it, well, it's not an issue anymore. We don't have to get permission to move it. So this is just absolutely scandalous. If I can find one of my research notes, I can get some diagrams for that, but bear with me. So one of the details of this is authorities ignored the possibility of widespread contamination. Significant quantities of radioactive contamination were unknowingly, I doubt that, excavated and spread around the areas of the site. Documents acknowledge that further contamination remains buried beneath the stadium, as we've said many, many times before. Highly sensitive monitoring detected a small amount of low-level radiological finds in the soil in the area. They said it was no risk to public workers. Excavations at the main stadium site were virtually completed before any radiation monitoring or protection measures were introduced. History as a high-risk, unregulated private landfill. Radiation was detected in the excavations in November 2007 and no action was taken. And it is not made public. Only in February 2008 were the relevant authorities alerted and remedial and protective measures started. A delegation from Beijing brought detection equipment, and it was registering off the scale readings, just like we had in the Michigan-Indiana border, just to the moon. Mysteriously, high levels of background radiation had been consistently recorded. So this is bad for PR for the Olympics. So of course they bury all this stuff. They bury the facts, they bury the truth, and they bury the radioactive material. The spin doctors play down the fact that 7,000 tons of radioactively contaminated material has now been reburied at the Olympic site. The waste material that could not be disposed of at any landfill in the country, even at special radioactive waste repository at Drigg. Reburying it on the site was a gamble and they took it. It has great proximity to the waterways. Material was to be mixed with lower radioactive material, thus reducing the average radioactivity to below the legal threshold, a process called dilution. It's supposed to be illegal. Any future excavation work will require special precautions, and any excavated material is to be treated as contaminated unless proven otherwise. Potential bidders for the media center after the Olympics, when you want to buy it, get a codicil in their agreement. Contaminants are likely to be present in many forms. For example, solid, gaseous, liquid, as well as deleterious forms, asbestos, and therefore future works should have to be taking into account this possibility. Remnant ground conditions may be hazardous in nature. So they're telling anyone who's going to buy this stuff afterwards that basically you're buying a disaster area. And then, you know, we just have to wonder, because here's a map that shows, we showed this before, some of these radioactive sites, the fact that they're, you know, in this area here, right next to the venues. This is the broadcast center. This place is a radiological nightmare. So the big vault is right about here, just close to the Olympic Stadium. This stuff also is giving off methane gas because of the other material that's underground. So lots of methane gas. So probably enough that if you did ignite something, you would have a massive gas fire. And people are going to pay good money to go to this pagan festival, to go to the Olympics. And who knows, risk some sort of mayhem. Hospital prepares for a chemical or nuclear incident at the Olympics. St. Mary's Hospital took training in chemical and biological events. Another incident that just boggles the mind is there's this company that somebody set up on the internet. It's a gangster company called Confidential Access. Confidential Access sells you fake documents, everything, passport, driver's licenses, credit references, anything you need to start a fraud scheme so that you can have duplicated documents of other people so you can go and commit fraud. They had 11,000 people use their website to buy this illegal material. Police are looking for some of them, of course. Some of the principals involved in this have been arrested and are going to jail. But of course, as soon as you realize that you're at the Olympic site, you've got 11,000, I don't know how many are in England per se, 11,000 people have false documents and are moving around England. Well, maybe some of them weren't intent on committing fraud, eh? So then, of course, the police figured that out too, because in 2006, this is what got the whole investigation going. The police swooped in on the home of a terrorist named Abid Haidar and discovered all this kind of stuff on his computer, that he was in with these people. And I'm sure he wasn't doing it for fraud. And we have another chap, Nick Pope, worked for the British Ministry of Defense, saying this could be the fake alien invasion time. So, and they're also getting up to prepare to fight the aliens just in case the aliens want to set off some sort of nuclear material at the Olympics and get it all going. Because you have to bring in this new world order, right? So the way to bring in the new world order, of course, is we have to have some sort of conflict, some kind of conflagration to panic and scare everyone because they're uninformed. That's one of the big reasons they panic and they get scared and they give away all their freedom and their liberty, is because they could never expect that anything like this would happen. They can't think tactically, strategically, like a military person or an intelligence agent to know what's happened. We never taught that in school. One of the areas we're going to go into, which is just totally bizarre, is this song, a very common song called Jerusalem. They sang it at the royal wedding. Originally it went out as "And Did Those Feet in Ancient Time," a short poem by William Blake, used in the epic that he wrote, Milton, a poem, collection of writings known as prophetic books. These prophetic books can be dangerous. That was back in 1804, it was published in 1808. Now it's called the Anthem Jerusalem because it was put to music by Sir Hubert Parry in 1916. It's the apocryphal story of a young Jesus accompanied by his uncle Joseph of Arimathea, traveled to the area in England and visited Glastonbury, that place very close to Stonehenge where they do all these wild and bizarre parties, where they have basically, you know, the Woodstock style concerts where everybody gets drugged out and does whatever they do. So they said this happened during Jesus' lost years. In the book of Revelation 3:12, 21:2, describing a second coming, Jesus establishes a new Jerusalem. These people, the Church of England and people around them, believe that this new Jerusalem is their backyard. And the second coming of Christ is going to happen in their backyard. And it comes like a thief in the night. They'll create a heaven in England, in contrast to the dark satanic mills of the Industrial Revolution. And what is the Olympic Park? The dark satanic mills of the Industrial Revolution, where they buried all the refuse of nuclear material and other material that is causing this methane gas to leak. So let's play our little video here.
And Solomon determined to build an house for the name of the Lord, and an house for his kingdom. And Solomon told out 70,010 men to bear burdens, and 80,000 to hew in the mountain, and 3,600 to oversee them.
Can be obviously of another dimension of sorts.
Yeah.
But basically, like, you've got this Zion street map that's fully biblical in every way, and you then decide. Well, I decided to pick up the Bible. I don't normally pick up the Bible. I'm not that type of person, but basically picked up and went to the book of Mark, and I decided to go to the chapter 11, verse 11. Mm-hmm. You know, the old 11:11. Yeah. We got this passage here. Then Jesus went into Jerusalem and into the temple and looked around at everything. Since it was already late, he went out with his 12 disciples to Bethany. So we've got a mention of Jesus entering Jerusalem. Yeah. Which is obviously Zion's the New Jerusalem. Mm. And it says that since it was already late, he went out with his 12 disciples to Bethany. Right next to the Olympics 2012 site, down a Roman road, is a place called Bethnal Green. Mm. Bethnal Green, Bethany, sounds the same, pretty close, you know, not too far off. Yeah. Bethnal Green is 3.3 miles, 33 degree Masons and everything, 3.3 miles from Charing Cross, the centre of London. Yeah. So symbolic and numerology and everything that goes with it.
Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. We had a little ex parte break here in the trial. But as you can see in this video from Rick Clay, deceased, probably murdered by the New World Order, that he really hit the head on something. This is such a deep, dark part. It is beyond belief. This shows you and shows us that for hundreds of years, perhaps, they've been working on this plot for the New Jerusalem. Part of prophecy is, of course, this New Jerusalem rises out of the chaos or the ashes as we who go to sleep have to become involved in an apocalyptic type of war that requires the Messiah to come back. Are these twits, these idiots, going to do something like that? So would to God that all the Lord's people were prophets. Numbers 11:29. That's a difficult job. That's a job I've been assigned. It's a very, very difficult job. So that's one that can clear out a room very, very fast, is when you prophesy to people about what's to come. And you do it accurately. Although it's just very, very bizarre, because a lot of people do trends research and such like that, and they want to know what's going to happen tomorrow so they can invest their money or profit or whatever for financial reasons. But to just tell people the truth of what a prophecy is and what's going to happen tomorrow, people run in terror. It also doesn't seem to be something that's valued in the way the financial structure is set up. So I can say that there's going to be an event off Japan 2 years, 1 year before it happens, to say that I prophesize that this is going to happen. And the resulting cash loss is hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. A loss of life, a whole region destroyed and laid out. But for some reason that doesn't seem to have any value to anyone. I can say there's going to be a terror attack in Washington and someone's going to use a model airplane to attack an important political figure a week before it happens. But that has no value. A lot of people, even in alternative media, can't understand the gift of prophecy. God gave me that gift. I didn't ask for it, didn't even want it. Sometimes it's almost, you almost envy the brain dead because they have long gaps of peace where they can rest or go on a vacation or just take a holiday. But this battle, this trend for, whatever that's happening is every day, 24/7. I couldn't keep up if I worked at it 24/7. I'd still be behind. I can only pick out some of the big ones and bring them forward. They happen all the time. I see right through their lies. So part of this this song, Jerusalem, they had a flour mill in the area, and it was burned in fire in 1791. It was called the Albion Flour Mill, and was probably the local people who burned it to the ground because it took away jobs and a livelihood and put out a substandard product that people had to eat, and they didn't want to eat a substandard product. Of course, we haven't been able to connect the dots and do that with Monsanto. So an old saying, and all the arts of life they changed into the arts of death in Albion, because they made out this poorer product. Jerusalem, chapter 3, William Blake. So some people look at the dark satanic mills as referring to this actual mill, Albion. Some people think it refers to the churches as they exist in England or existed in England at the time. One of the other little factors in the dark satanic mills is in the megalith that the author wrote. He has those words next to like a drawing, an illustration, a pen illustration of something very much like Stonehenge, close to Glastonbury. And I'll have to keep that image to put on the blog. I'll have to write about this. This is a very in-depth one. It's going to take a little bit of time. So in his poem, the starry mills of Satan are built beneath the earth and waters of the mundane shell. The starry mills of Satan are built beneath the earth and the waters of the mundane shell. What do they call a stadium, like an Olympic stadium frequently? A shell? because it's a different type of structure than most structures. It's open, like a shell. And beneath are the radioactive elements that are buried, and possibly even other things that may go pop in the dark. To mortals, thy mills seem everything, and the harrow of Shaddai, a scheme of human conduct, invisible and incomprehensible. So the plots of the New World Order, of the brains behind the planes types of things, are invisible and beyond the comprehension of the average person. They just can't understand. Even when you explain it to them in clear and precise language, they still can't understand. Because I guess their brains have just been programmed that way. They can't discern and they can't ask questions. And that's a terrible shame. So of course he says, bring me my chariot of fire. So in 2 Kings 2:11, Elijah is taken directly to heaven. And it came to pass, and as they still went on and talked, that, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And what is the famous movie of the Olympics? Maybe a lot of the younger crowd haven't seen it, and it shows our age now that we remember what we can call old movies now. The 1981 classic, Chariots of Fire, a movie about the Olympics. The Chariots of Fire. The green and pleasant land has become a collocation identifying English landscape or society. In another part they talk about revolution, forced to resort to cloaking social idealism and political statements in Protestant mystical allegory. Blake, the author, was an outspoken supporter of the French Revolution, his desire for radical change without overt sedition. He was charged with high treason for having uttered seditious and treasonable expressions and acquitted in his day. Prophecy for Blake, however, was not a prediction of the end of the world, but telling the truth as best as a person can about what he or she sees, fortified by insight and an honest persuasion that with personal struggle things can be improved. Sounds like I've walked down that trail a little bit. Blake wanted to stir people from their intellectual slumbers, the daily grind of their toil, to see that they were captivated in the grip of a culture which kept them thinking in ways which served the interests of the powerful. Things haven't changed much. He stressed the importance of people taking responsibility for change and building a better society in England's green and pleasant land. It is our responsibility, it is our duty to do these things, even today. Little known during the century which followed his writing, an anthology verse, The Spirit of Man, edited in Great Britain's first poet laureate Robert Bridges in 1916, reintroduced his poem. It was supposed to be used for the military in 1916 to support the war, because things weren't going too well on the front. Many British soldiers were being killed, and they wanted to have a patriotic song, so they put this poem and scored it and made what we just heard at the royal wedding. It has been adopted by all the political parties in England. The Labour Party was used in the 1945 general election. Clement Attlee used it. The Conservative Party, the Glee Club, the British Liberal Assembly, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, everybody sings it. But they had problems, Mr. Perry, the man who scored it, for using it in what was called the fight for right, the propaganda war, to get people to volunteer to go to the front to get killed. So then they coaxed him into using it for the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies. So he accepted that. That seemed to be a more reasonable thing, to give, a fight to give women rights. See, we're a democratic nation, right? We didn't give women the right to vote or even to be people. You weren't even people. That's something the girls had to fight for. When the NUWSS fell by the wayside, the copyright was just given to women's institutes. King George V said he preferred Jerusalem over God Save the King, the so-called national anthem, even though England doesn't really have a so-called national anthem. But they want to give it official status as an alternative anthem. Jerusalem is used in many churches. On St. George's Day, many churches refuse to use it because it is not a hymn. It has nothing to do, it doesn't say anything about God in it. Just a good song. But then, of course, what would Antichrist force? They could sing a nice song in church, but it can't have any reference to God in it. Each year, along with the red flag, it is sung at the annual Labour Party conference, and we can safely assume the red flag means the communist element of politics. Emerson, Lake and Palmer used it in brain salad surgery. That's where I remember it from my youth. It was used, of course, at Prince William's wedding. And then, of course, U2, Bono, sung it at Glastonbury in June 2011. And then we have to look a little further. Well, what happened at Glastonbury in 2011? The Prime Minister's friend, Christopher Shale, was found dead in a toilet. Most likely ostensibly murdered, although they just said he died of natural causes because they can write the reports and they own the coroner. And we always had to wonder, what did he know? And as we expand our horizons, maybe he knew Jerusalem. Maybe he knew the new Jerusalem is coming. And the satanic mills that existed on the Olympic site are going to explode and bring in the new Jerusalem. Maybe that's what he knew. And it was a little too much to handle, and he cracked. And they can't allow a good plan to get away. So they killed him. And they killed Rick Clay for making a lot of the assumptions that we've made. So even though they killed him, it didn't do them any good because his work was found by my people, and my people gave it to me, and we've presented it further. So you can't kill the idea. It'll never die. Someone will always take it further. It's just like a relay race. I give the baton to someone else, even though I never knew this man, never heard of him before. He died, but the baton that he made, filmed, was passed to me, and I carried it further, and I pass it on to you. And maybe someone else will pick up that baton and even carry it further. And the dark satanic mills will be put in their place. One of the other big things, of course, we can't avoid Europe. Down the tracks like a runaway freight train. People don't hear it, they don't see it. So in Bilderberg they said Spain will be sacrificed. I can't disagree with that. Germany's resources are finite. Come hell or high water, it is imperative to preserve the functioning of the banking system. Spain's vice president. Well, that's very, very true. So when she approached the Bilderbergs, talking about issuing euro bonds, they just told her to go and pound salt. A little girl. So they didn't take it very seriously. Euro bonds are guaranteed by Germany, and Germany isn't going to bear the debt burdens of these other countries. Why would we want to save you? If Spain has lied about the depth of their financial troubles, your banking system is worthless. You don't have any equity. So the answer is a resounding no. And that tells the rest of us it's time to push the alarm button. Deposit money is fleeing from Spain. It was announced at 66.2 billion euros in March. Flew the coop. Debt of Spanish financial institutions is 109% of the GDP, twice the amount for in France or Germany, and 3 times that of the United States, which really aren't in all that good a stead anyway. Banco Santander has an unpayable debt of over 800 billion euros. 800 billion euros. The only solution, they say in this article, which I must agree with, is Spain must leave the euro, go back to an independent nation-state republic. It would even be better if they create their own money as opposed to bankster-created central bank cash. But this forced marriage of the euro is suicide for all of them. EU admits discussing plans to limit withdrawals from cash machines and impose border checks if Greece quits the euro. So this is something that hasn't been seen since, you're going back to long before most of us were born, probably all of us. We got to get into the nursing homes to talk to the octogenarians and older to even remember things like this, and they were probably children and don't even know it happened. This is a crisis that no living person really has experienced or understood. Border checks, capital controls, so that you can't move money and you can't get around. A strong indicator that Greece is about to leave the euro would be a run on the banks. So they want to stop this capital flight using grounds of public order, public security for after the elections on Sunday. Spain and Greece have reported substantial increases in money being pulled out of the banks. Greek deposits are down by 17%. They pulled out $3 billion out of the banks. Spain's central bank showed a $97 billion pullout in the first 3 months of the year. A tenth of the country's gross domestic product. This is going to be a bloodbath when it comes. Cyprus is in a lot of trouble. Let's see here. So we have a graph of the stock market. This is the FTSE hour by hour, just showing even after this is the announcement that they're going to bail out Spain, and then we see, yeah, we get this short euphoria, just like a sniff of cocaine, and then it just, reality sets in and it just filters back down again. There's just pretty much no way that this can go any other way. So one of the big things they want to come up with, of course, is the European Union leaders and everyone say, well, we have to put Germany in charge. We have to have these Euro bonds. We have to have Germany dictating economic policy to all these other countries and basically taking them over. Turn the European Union into a full-scale country controlled by Germany and Germany's central banks, with Germany taking away the loot as collateral, central bank gold, cash reserves of the people looking for credit. Because effectively, they're waging economic warfare. They're shutting out these countries from credit until they starve. And when they starve, then they come begging for it. So the president of Spain had to go on public airwaves and actually beg them for it. And still, it was not like, yeah, we'll help you. They just make them beg. So it's easier for troubled Eurozone banks to access EU credit. They talk about competitiveness again too, because all this competitiveness just means, like, competition usually means destruction. Stephen Harper, he talks about giving Europe the tools, giving Germany the tools, so that they can be the new world order in Europe. Everybody seems to be going in that direction, talking about that kind of stuff, to give Germany these tools. Angela Merkel talks about that too. Actually, I heard a good joke today about Angela Merkel, so you can't go wrong with a good joke, especially with dry topics like this. So Angela Merkel goes to Greece. She stops in at customs, and the customs officer asks the usual questions. So one of the questions he asks is, occupation? And she goes, no, I'm only going to be here for 3 days. So Germany isn't going to occupy Greece. Not yet, but in time they will. Because one of the main crisis points is they want to get all these nation states on their knees to surrender their sovereignty. And it's not the states surrendering their sovereignty. That's the big thing we don't catch on. It's we, the people. The people, we're surrendering our sovereignty so that they can take over us and turn us into debt slaves, because we're bonded debt slaves. That's why we have these social insurance numbers and such like that, because we're bonded debt slaves. That goes back to the 30s when we went bankrupt before. They put the living population in bondage to the bankers, and we're sold and traded on international markets as well, even though we don't know it. We think we're free, but we're just better slaves. So one of the biggest problems, of course, and I feel this is the greatest problem in economics, period, is financial crises aren't caused by, like what we showed here with the declining stock market or crashing stock markets or falling stock markets. The biggest thing that happens is capital flight. When we have capital flight, that creates the power vacuum. It causes everything to collapse on each other. And in the 1930s, we had capital flight being the cause of the Depression. It had nothing to do with the stock market crash. And the reason for that is the hidden history. Wall Street was sending their money to Germany to finance Hitler. I think it was 70%, Anthony Sutton said, that of Wall Street, New York's money was going to Germany to finance Hitler. Well, if we got 70% of Wall Street's investment dollars here at ThatChannel, we'd be one of the biggest corporations in the world, if not the biggest corporation in the world. And nothing could stop it, even if we were bumbling fools. So it's the capital flight that broke the American back. All this money was sent to do the dirty work to get the oil wells back from Stalin, and American people had to suffer. and suffer and suffer. So after they starved you, then they sent you into a war to get killed some more. And still, people don't want to wake up and smell the coffee. So barring an accident like Lehman Brothers, they feel the division between debtor and creditor countries will become permanent. Inevitably arouse suspicion of Germany's role. This author says it's quite inappropriate. It is not a deliberate plan, but a lack of a plan. And I disagree. I think it was a deliberate plan. It was a deliberate plan that went back to World War II. They keep talking about the strong Europe, the strong Germany, the strong central bank to control all the other people. The only way to get them out of this burden, of course, is to reduce the debt burden and stop borrowing. You can't live on borrowed dreams. I can't go take my credit card out after tonight and just go blow it everywhere. Sooner or later I've got to pay the piper. I can't live beyond my means. I can't do it. A family can't do it. A company can't do it. And sure as hell a country can't do it. Because once you start living beyond your means, sooner or later you have to pay the piper. The only way to get out of this mess is to do the good thing. And the good thing is we have to create our own debt-free money, a country asset type of currency. And if we don't do it, we're done. So one of the blogs I put up too, just to say, D-Day, 1944, 68 years, victory turned into defeat. When I read about the Canadian Prime Minister saying that we have to give Germany the tools and let Germany lead Europe, I said, that's what we fought World War II over. That's what we fought World War I over. We got 120,000 plus boys buried over there. And you're going to give up the war to them. That's the whole way the Bilderbergs work. They have infiltrated us to win the war that Germany couldn't win on the battlefield. They're winning it in the boardroom. All those guys died in vain. Because our son, our hero, our Schicklgruber Prime Minister and all the big business cohorts, the academics, the banksters, the politicians are giving Germany the victory. Hjalmar Schacht said that to Hitler. He said, use bonds and bank loans, not bombs. And trap them in debt and make them beg for you to be their master. They'll do it. But Hitler had other tasks. So this map of Hitler's Germany, as it expanded in war, looks pretty much like the European Union today that they want us to get into. There's no mistake. There's our Prime Minister Schicklgruber talking with the French leader, Francois Hollande. And then we see the darker aspects, the conspiracy aspects that are well documented here. You click on the links and you can learn a lot. But this is Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, the founder of the Bilderberg Group, meeting Evita Peron, who was the trustee for all the stolen Reich Bank loot. This is a document showing Martin Bormann's accounts. He was Hitler's #2 man in Argentina, showing the money trail. This is Prince Bernhard, Knight of Malta, showing you where we have gotten with their plan. All our leaders are under the thumb of the Bilderbergs.